Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode of the award-winning Hill Country Authors Podcast. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to have with me Tim Garson. Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Great to be with you.
Tim, you wrote one of the most unique books I've come across lately. It's entitled 5,000 Years of Controversy, A Family's Journey Through World History, where you take the breadth and scope of world history and try to tell us how it's all connected, if I've got that right, in a mere 700 pages. So maybe I could start with, what on earth gave you the inspiration to write this book?
So if I go way back, I'm a kid's cardiologist, which makes no sense. Why would a pediatric cardiologist write a history book? I wound up becoming the provost of the University of Virginia right down the road here. And you might say, what does a provost do? A provost, the deans report to the provost. And so I'm the chief academic officer of the university. And so a number of years ago, we're sitting around with a bunch of deans and the provost, and we're actually talking about AI of all things, and about how should we even think about handling AI. And somebody said, shouldn't we put a group of smart people together and every 5 years or so update what does the world need to know to stay ahead of AI? Good luck. As part of that conversation, we said, all right, what should an educated person know? What should a person graduating from college need to know? And one of the first things it came up with was world history. So I'm sitting there turning purple, thinking, wait a minute, I haven't taken world history since 6th grade. And the more I thought about it, I think everybody was right. I think knowing something about world history, everybody that thinks they're educated ought to know something. So I said, all right, I am going to undertake to learn about world history, and I'm going to write a book about it. But I'm going to write a book for people just like me who couldn't care less about world history and who really would like ultimately to know something, but didn't study it, have not studied it. And so the idea of this book is to be easy with a bunch of facts. There must be 10,000 facts. It's a nonfiction book, but it is characterized as some variety of fiction because the way it works is every chapter has a dinner where the mother teaches her kids. So in summary, I figured, why not me? And I probably read about 500 books to prepare for this, and then took notes on the notes, which is something I learned how to do as a cardiologist. But that's how it started.
How long did it take you to research and then write the book?
About 5 years.
I certainly understand your research approach as you just explained it. What I don't understand, and I'm going to ask you, is your experiences in medicine that would shape an approach to not simply history, but your storytelling.
I'm a pediatrician, and so start there. And pediatricians love kids, and I happen to, and I've got 5 grandkids that are the best thing ever happened to me. And pediatricians tell stories. Pediatricians get kids and have to figure out a way when a child gets in the room with you, and I'm sure you know this, it isn't about the child, it's about the child's mother. And so if the child's mother's going like this, if you can tell stories, if you can smile, if you can get people co-opted, things go well. The kids quit crying. So I learned long ago to tell stories. I figured with this, why not essentially tell stories in a very easy way. I keep saying easy. There's a bunch of facts in every chapter. So this is not Looney Tunes. This is a very factual book, but it's in a conversation of a mother and her 2 kids. That's the way I put it together. And then in medicine, I think the last time I looked, I was a visiting professor in over 200 places. When you're a visiting professor, you get up and you talk to people and you teach. So I love to teach, and that's part of telling stories as well.
The characters in the book, is this a Groundhog Day? They're reliving everything, or is it a series of generations of different families who are talking to us through your 50 time periods?
So each chapter is the same family unit, but that's it. So there is a father, a mother, a 15-year-old, a 15-year-old boy, 12-year-old girl, and an uncle. And that unit gets together for dinner, but it is completely different every chapter. So the people in 2200 BC have Egyptian names, and they are talking about, the mother is teaching those people about what's going on with the pyramids. And the father and the uncle get into an argument at the end with dessert, every chapter. The father and the uncle get into an argument. In the pyramids chapter, it's actually about the Nile died. Factually, the Nile stopped for 7 years in one of the generations of Egypt. And the question is, why did it stop? And so the controversy factually was about actually climate change. And they didn't call it climate change back then. But as you go back and you look at it, there was an Ethiopia is not terribly far from where the Nile starts. There was an immense set of volcanoes that went off. The volcanoes' dust went over the entire Nile. The sun got blocked for a long period of time, and guess what? The Nile stopped. And then Egypt stopped for 7 years. And so actually it was the same sort of thing in climate change. The other part that probably would have been said is, oh no, it's the gods. So the argument was the father and the uncle were the gods and the climate change. If you go to the Newton or to the Einstein chapter, it's more about, or even, the Einstein chapter, should the US have dropped bombs in World War II or not? But in that chapter, there's a father and a mother and the two kids and the uncle in 1945. So the only thing that's similar are the actual sort of figurines, but they've got 1945 names. They've got the initial part of each chapter sets the tone, sets the scene for where they are and who they are, if that helps. I hope it does.
So I grew up in a household where there was no discussion at the dinner table. Children were to be seen and not heard. So I never had any of this ever. So it's difficult for me to imagine what it's like to talk to your parents in this manner. Is that something you grew up with, or did you have experience of that? Did you have a crazy uncle who came at Thanksgiving? How did you develop that sort of framework?
So how about my father graduated from high school at 10, graduated from college at 14, and no one that talked with him was ever right about anything. And so our dinner discussion, and he was in Ripley's, believe it or not, he was the youngest college graduate for a long time. And ultimately, he had a bra business of all things. What's a 14-year-old in Atlanta, Georgia going to do except go into his father's bra business? And he literally sold bras at the age of 14. No one was ever able to tell him he was wrong, and ultimately it was his downfall. But that was sitting at dinner it might have been more fun not to talk at all. I think the dinner in this book was very idealized of, the way I wish it would have been, not the way I grew up.
Who is this book written for? history lover, family, educators, or did you write it for yourself?
I wrote it, I studied it for me. I wrote it for high school kids. Or for really any group of people that thinks they want to know something about history but never did it. And so that, I imagine, there are kids who take history in high school who hate it and who get all kinds of books and notes and bad teachers, unfortunately, who, if a teacher said, hey, here's this book, we're studying the Civil War this week, go read this 10-page chapter, you'll get much more of a feel of what's going on in the Civil War. So it's for, I say high school, it's two completely different audiences. It's high school, it's parents. You and I would both wish that the parents would have a discussion with their kids at dinner like this. You wish they would. Second of all, what I would love to see is a history teacher use the controversy in the book and assign 3 kids to do one side of the controversy and 3 kids to do the other side and have the controversy acted out in class. That'd be really fun. That's what I hope it would be used for. Then there's a whole other audience of people that sort of say, gee, I'd like to know something about history. The way I read books is I put them down and pick them up. All 50 of these chapters are independent. So you can read the Einstein chapter is completely separate from the chapter on the Constitution, from the French Revolution. They're all independent. So they're in order. The dinners are in order of time, starting with 2200. My favorite chapter is probably the last chapter, which is 30 years from now. And I have dinner in 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years talking about what AI would be like in 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. That's a completely different kind of fun.
Have you thought about building some type of high school curriculum around what you just described, either the 50 chapters or maybe pare it down to a smaller number where then you set up the 3 versus 3 debate?
I'd love to do that. When you say curriculum, and you've done this a long time, of course, you know more than I do. When you say curriculum in Texas, it is very difficult to break into curriculum in Texas. And so what I'm hoping, and we literally have to find some way in. Lawrence Steffi and his crew are wonderful. They're just terrific people. This is my 10th book. It's my first book on history, but I've written on national health care and cardiology and stuff. This is the best publisher I've ever dealt with. But we are a little bit stymied about how to get to high school kids and their parents and their teachers. I would love to create a curriculum if anybody uses it. I would hope that the word fun, I'd like to make learning fun. This should be an enjoyable but very informative way of learning history.
Let me turn to your writing style. I'm also a writer, and so I love to talk to writers about writing, very meta. I'm a morning person. I write in the morning. That's when I do my best work. I do podcasts the rest of the day, not as hard as writing. So are you a morning person, an evening person? You told us you read 500 books and you took extensive notes. Did you digest that up in your head and just let the story come out? Or did you do a more structured approach with an outline for each chapter?
Very structured. And actually, what I started with was 8 world history books, cover to cover, and I took notes. I have not a clue how many pages of notes. It would probably take me 2 days to count them, but thank goodness for computers. But I started reading and taking notes on 8 world history books. And then I actually wrote the sort of factual things that came out of each world history book. And As you can imagine, they're very different. People think they're dealing with world history. No, they're not. They're dealing with their impression of world history. And I'm sure that's true with mine as well. But I lined up the 8 books on a timeline and then took what seemed to be 2 things. What seemed to be that most of them dealt with, everybody dealt with World War I, duh. The further back you go, some of them dealt with none of it. And then I said, do I really care about that? So I took a little bit of liberty but the major way I did it was to take all 8 of those world history books and then write down, and then notes on each one, and then notes on the notes. Then once I had a table of contents, once I figured out, okay, these, and 50's could have been 38. I had, the last book I wrote was called The 20 Myths of American Healthcare. And one of the people that reviewed it got on and said, or wrote and said, there are too many chapters. You could have had 16 because chapter 3 and 16 repeat themselves. And 3 was, why are we so expensive? And 16 is how to fix it. Anyway, obviously 50 chapters in this book is an arbitrary number, but it seems to work. And then I started chapter 1 and I read everything I could find. I probably, in each chapter, it's about right, 10 books or articles or something per chapter. And then I wrote 1 chapter at a time, completely disciplined. And I didn't do chapter 2 until I finished chapter 1. I'm a morning person as well. And so fortunately, the grandkids, afternoon, evening, and grandkids writing, grandkids win. But they're at school and they go from 8 to 4 right now, age 8 to age 4. So I'm a morning person as well. I think I'm sure it's not unique, but it's helpful to do, for me, to do notes and then reread the notes and knock them down by about half and keep knocking them down and then write.
You mentioned Lauren Steffi at Stony Creek Publishing. I'd like to turn to that topic and ask what it was like working with Lauren and his team at Stony Creek, or what's it been like for you?
It's all I have. I went and looked. I've written 9 books for 4 different publishers, and they're all national. And when you write something for a big national publisher, you wind up, it's a little bit like the House or the Senate. You wind up with a 12-year-old who's your person, and very different than Lauren Steffi, who's a pro. When I got signed up by Gruen & Stratton or Saunders or something like that, yeah, the pros come out, talk to you and all that, and then you get the 12-year-old. So now I remember probably the most important thing I learned from the 12-year-old is the difference between that and which. That was my first book that I learned something about. But these are pros. These are well-seasoned people that I'm more used to dealing with 12-year-olds.
So when will the book be released if you have a publication date?
I have an almost publication date. All I'm certain has told me, the Amazon says May 17th. And he said, it ain't going to be May 17th, but I think it's going to be pretty close because I've got the book. I've got it where it looks just like a book. It doesn't have a front and a back cover. And so I think we're close. It may not be May 17th, but I'll bet you it's before June 30th.
Unfortunately, Tim, we are near the end for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if any of our listeners wanted to connect with you, pre-order the book, find out more about your overall career, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
I know very little about Instagram. I am on Instagram and I check it. So, that my real born with name happens to be Arthur. What? I was a premature baby called Tiny Tim from the very first part of life, and I have had to live that down for 77 years. I hate it, but that's the way it is. People asking for money call me Arthur. That I know, the college guy called Art, wrong. So I'm on Instagram, and what the heck? My regular old email is Garson, Garson .tim, Tim, at Gmail. Why not?
What about either Stony Creek, or is this book published through the Texas A&M University Press?
I'm sure it will be. It's just not yet. So because it isn't out yet. It'll be on the Stony Creek website, certainly.
Tim, this has just been a delightful time. I hope we can continue this conversation, and I'm greatly looking forward to the book.
Want me in? I'd love to. Thank you.